Welcome to the third video in Addams October 2020. All month long, I am working to finish up this gigantic project that is behind me, and I have one more video to do after this one. However, in this video, I am going to be working on Uncle Fester's room. Yeah, this one right above my head is Uncle Fester's room, and then I'm going to be working on a few rooms in the basement. These are all little tiny details that I have been putting off for so long that I'm having to wrap up now in order to call this project done. So let's get started. I started by grabbing all the items I already had in Fester's room. That includes the bed that I made in a previous video, a little chest that I purchased at a miniature show, and I just really like the look of it, but it's a little bit too bright and cheery for the Addams family. And then I have this little skeleton that I think is a pendant to a necklace, but there's a skeleton in Fester's room in the first movie. He kind of hangs against the wall, and he reminded me of that, so I grabbed him for Fester's room. After I had created Fester's bed and mattress in a previous video, I asked everybody what kind of bed covering they thought he should have. And the most common answer was a rough blanket with an old pillow that looked like it didn't have a cover. So that's what we're going with. I'm using some spooky cloth or scary cloth, spooky something. Anyway, it's the dollar store stuff you can get, and it's in black. It's just like a net, and I'm using just a square of cotton black fabric. I'm not gluing these together because I'm going to be dumping them into a mixture of water and glue, so eventually they'll be glued together anyway. I have a bucket here that I just added some tacky glue to the bottom, and now I'm pouring some water over the top. I'm mixing these together to create a water glue solution, and if you want more information about this technique, I do have a video over draping fabric. After it's pretty well mixed, I'm going to take the two pieces that I previously cut out, and I'm going to try and keep them together as best as possible, and that's pretty easy because the net type material is kind of sticky, so it stayed pretty well on top of the black cotton. I'm putting this onto a piece of wax paper instead of onto the bed because I don't want the water to seep into the mattress and possibly cause mold. I'm trying to form it into a crumpled up blanket on the wax paper as I'm looking at the bed, trying to picture what it would look like on the bed. While that's drying off to the side, I am going to be making a pillow. I'm using some quilt batting that I usually use to upholster, and I'm cutting 3 layers of quilt batting here into the size that I want my pillow to be. And I'm just trying to make it to be the right shape for a pillow. I'm also going to be adding 1 layer of aluminum foil inside of the other layers. This is going to help me shape the pillow into a scrunched up shape. And so I'm just making sure that it fits inside the other layers. I'm adding just a little bit of glue so that things don't slide around once I'm trying to shape my pillow. I'm going to be making a pretty rough pillow cover. Typically I like to make like a little hem and turn them inside out, but for Fester's pillow I want it fringing at the edges anyway, so I'm just adding some Fabri-Tac all around the outside of the rectangle that is the interior fluff, and then I'm folding over a piece of fabric that is the color of bare pillows and then just pushing it into the glue. Once the glue has dried, I can just take a sharp pair of fabric scissors and cut through the dried glue so that I have a pretty rough seam around my pillow. And now you'll be able to see that with the aluminum foil in the center, I can push it into any shape I like, and this is what will give it its lumpy, bumpy, used texture when I put it onto the bed. And here's how it looks on the bed, but of course it needs a little bit of aging. First, I made a mess with my water all over my desk, but then I was ready to mix a little bit of brown paint with some water and add it to the edges of the pillow. It does look pretty dark now, but I do find that on fabric, the acrylic paints do lighten up quite a bit, so I've started going darker and darker with my washes. As you can see, it lightened up a little bit, and it definitely looks like a pillow I would find in the attic and not want to use. My blanket is now mostly dry. It's dry enough so that the water will not seep into the mattress, and so I'm going to go ahead and place it onto the bed and add a little bit of glue underneath the blankets once I'm happy with its placement. And this is how it's looking. This does not look like a bed I would want to sleep in, so I think it's perfect. Moving on to the chest that will sit at the end of the bed, I want to keep the beautiful wood grain, so I'm going to be using some watered down paint to act as a stain, and I'm just going to brush that onto the face of the wood. This will also help the drawers look the same color as the rest of the chest. I think this gives it a much darker appearance, and it'll fit in a little bit better with Fester's bed. I already knew the miniatures I wanted to put into Fester's chest. There's a part in the first movie where Fester helps the kids with his Shakespeare, and it involves some prosthetic arms, so I had these old doll parts that I wanted to put into the chest. I'm starting to fill it up with some quilt batting, and then I'm adding some glue and finishing it off with some black so that it looks like, well, it doesn't look like anything, so whenever you're looking into the chest, you really can't see what's in there. I really don't want it to look like human arms or anything, so I'm not giving any shading to these pieces. I really do want them to look like fake arms like they used in the first movie. I also had to put one in this little drawer at the bottom. I also ended up adding a few little leather straps. This is the same faux leather that I used for Uncle Knick-Knack, and I just thought it'd be interesting to have a few little bits hanging out here and there. And then finally I added some embroidery thread, which I unraveled at one end to hopefully look like wires. And here's the finished piece, and I have it all glued in so it should stay put, and I really like how that turned out. Now moving on to the skeleton, I'm really not doing much for him except aging him. And by the way, I'm painting on top of some labels. Like, I have these shipping labels for my store, and I realized that the backing that comes off the labels is kind of waxy. So I've been painting on top of them, and it's been a great way to reuse something that normally just gets thrown away. I'm starting with a base coat of cream, and I'm also making sure to get this cream paint on the metal pieces that are holding the joints together. I think it gives it a much more cohesive look. And then I'm going over it with a watered down brown. And then I just finished him by adding some black to his eyes. And he's done, and I think he's looking a lot more aged. I think the most requested character I've had besides the baby Pubert is Debbie, Fester's wife. And so I decided I could make her real quick here, and I am going to add her into Fester's room, where probably the entire final scene of the second movie happened. But anyway, this is how I'm making Debbie. I started with a clump of polymer clay and made it into a little pile shape. I printed out some credit cards, and I have this shoe that I painted pink that's going to represent Debbie. I often like to finish my projects off by putting a single shoe in, kind of as a signature, so this was the perfect opportunity. Since I was already working with polymer clay, I decided to go ahead and make this light bulb shape, which will help me in my next project for Fester. Now I'm going to bake these and get back to making Debbie. So once baked, this is how it looks. I can finally pick it up. I am going to glue all the pieces on. I had previously pushed the shoe in, so there was a perfect spot for it, and I had cut little slits for the credit cards. So I'm just going to slip those in there with glue so that they are in place before I add the ashes. All I'm going to do is add a light coat of water and glue that's mixed together, and then I'm going to take whatever this is. I'm actually not quite sure what this is. Someone gave it to me. I think it is just white sand, like white art sand, and but it works really well. I did 2 coats of this to completely cover the polymer clay, and that was about it. I let it dry, and now I have another miniature added to the list of weird miniatures I never imagined I would create. For the last project for Uncle Fester, of course, he is the most well known for having a light bulb, so that's what we're going to make. I am using this mold putty. It's a 2-part mix mold putty, and I am going to create a mold of the polymer clay light bulb shape that I had created earlier. I was trying to think of several different ways to do this. This is the way I came up with, and it worked pretty okay, but if you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments. By the way, this mold putty has this kind of greasy texture when you're working with it, so you'll see a few of those marks on my desk. That's what it's from. To create the mold, I'm only pushing the light bulb in halfway, and then I'm removing it and I'm going to push it in halfway in another spot on the mold. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm using UV resin, so I can't completely surround the light bulb because otherwise the UV light would not be able to get all the way through the resin. So that's why I've decided to do this. If I was using 2-part mix resin, I could probably do an entire mold that was covering the whole light bulb. Here I'm adding resin drop by drop to each light bulb shape, and this is only going to create half a light bulb per shape, and then I will end up putting them together. I'm using a toothpick to make sure it gets all the way to the edge, and then using my UV light to cure the resin. Creating it in halves is actually giving me the opportunity to paint the interior wires of the light bulb, and then I'm going to let the paint dry. And then I'm going to add a very thin layer of UV resin on top of the paint, pop out the other side of the light bulb, and here you can see I'm spreading out that very thin layer. Then I'm going to put the other side of the light bulb on top of there and then cure it, and then in theory I should have a finished complete light bulb. Now this first one I will show you comes out a little bit strange. It's a little bit too wide, and I think it's because I overfilled the molds, but I do try several more and end up coming up with a good amount to fill the molds to get a fairly okay looking light bulb. I end up making about 5 of these, and I feel like that's enough to put into Fester's room, and this is probably the best one that came out of that bunch. To finish them off, I put a glob of silver paint, grabbed it with some tweezers, and I'm just going to dip the bottom of the light bulb into the silver paint and let it dry. And that's it for creating the light bulbs. I did decide, since some of them looked a little strange, that I was going to put them into a basket and glue them in there, and that way I could kind of control the side that people were looking at. And so I glued them in with the weirdest one towards the back and then put the better light bulbs towards the front. And so now I have a basket of light bulbs where my mistakes are a little bit hidden. So now it's time to put all these creations into Fester's room. I almost forgot, I need to put the light bulb in first, of course. This is a light that I purchased from miniatures.com, and this one has a little disc that you just glue onto the ceiling. So I'm going to do that real quick, so by the time I'm done putting things into the room, the glue should be dry and I can put the light up. I'm also aging around it, so it will look like it's part of the scene. In this lighting, you can see the bed covering just a little bit better, and I really like how it came together. Here's the chest that goes at the end of the bed. And of course, our little skeleton friend that's going to hang in the room. I was originally thinking about gluing him to the wall, similar to the way he is in the movie, but then I decided to add a hook into the column towards the back. I just like that placement a little bit better, and then if he's on a hook, I can take him out and replace him a little bit later if I like to. I'm using my Dremel just to drill a hole into the column, and then I'm just using a paper clip that I'm going to bend, add a little bit of super glue to, and put into that hole. Creates a perfect hook to hold our little skeleton. I also decided, since he's the one that has a huge hole in his wall, that I would add the cannon into his room. I think that is self-explanatory. And then I'm going to tuck Debbie away on the other side of the chest. Maybe Fester just kind of swept her over there as a fond memory of his loving wife. I'm adding the light bulbs onto the workbench for easy access, and I really do think gluing them into the basket made them look a whole lot better. Maybe someday I will hang some from the ceiling. I think that would look cool too. Finally, we can add the light in because the plate that I glued in earlier is dry. and Fester's room is finished. And now that we're done with Fester's room, it's time to go all the way to the basement. The vault area, or the playroom area, is this room down here. It is actually right next to Lurch's room, and both of these rooms have been long put off. If you're wondering why I have two different names for this specific room, it's because in the TV show they have a playroom that has the Iron Maiden and the bed of nails, and then in the movie they have what they call the vault, which has all of their money and treasures and family heirlooms. And so I am kind of combining that into this room over here because I don't have enough room to make the entire vault, which is pretty huge, and you have to have a gondola to like get to it. So that's why I'm combining it with the playroom, because it's just one small room. It's not really my favorite, but I think it might be something I come back to in the future. Like we said, these projects are not ever really finished. Before I actually get into the rooms, there's one project I have been ignoring for forever, since before my YouTube channel even started, and I have to finish it now. The project I'm referring to is sealing the entire basement floor. I made this basement floor a while ago, and instead of using cardboard or cereal boxes like I did in the cardboard house, I used 2 layers of cardstock, and I've noticed that some of the layers of cardstock have started popping up. And so what I need to do is take Mod Podge, go over the entire thing. And by the way, I found that I hid miniatures from myself back here behind the stairs, so those were good to find. But I'm going to use Mod Podge over the entire floor. It's not only going to protect it, but it's going to keep any of those pieces of paper from popping up over the years. It's also going to allow me to age it a little bit more, and I don't have to worry about any of the aging process ruining the floor. This was one of those projects that didn't take me very long to do. I don't know why I kept putting it off forever and ever, probably because I had to clean out the entire basement, and yeah, anyway, I'm glad it's done now. It's something that needed to be done. And I realized that somehow I Mod Podged red glitter into the floor. I don't even have red glitter. I have no idea how it got there, but it's now a permanent part of Grandmama's floor. I'm sure she will be thrilled. So after that was done, I could go back and finish aging some of the edges of the kitchen. I aged the walls a little bit, but never went into the creases and the edges of the walls, so I wanted to make sure and do that before I continued with any part of the basement. I love aging, so of course I just put on a podcast, sat down, and went to work with my paintbrush and really enjoyed the process. After I'm done, it looks pretty much the same, except for some more dirt and grime has gotten into the very corners of the room. We're actually going to go into the treasure room and work on it a little bit. I'm going to be using this very bright and sunny dresser that's shining us in the eyes, and some rubber cement, which is suggested to me by my friend Chris. She said this was great for cementing things down, and so I'm going to try it out. I'm starting with this beautiful piece, which was sent to me by Anna from Anna's Wonderland a long time ago. It didn't actually end up sitting on top of the dresser, but I will use it in another spot. I also have these little bags full of treasure that were from Right Guide Miniatures, which are no longer in business. They made beautiful miniatures, and I wish I could go back and purchase more of their miniatures. But these just are so cute, and they look really good up on the dresser. They have little gold nuggets. One has gold nuggets and one has pearls, and they come with little extra pieces that I can add to my surface to look like they are spilling out of the bag. A lot of the other bits sitting on the dresser were pieces I've collected over the years, and some of them were jewels that were also sent to me by Anna. She sent me this beautiful little jug of just jewels and all sorts of little things, so it was perfect for the Addams family treasure room. The little box of gold was also made by Right Guide Miniatures. Now that I have everything set out, I'm going to be trying the rubber cement method, and to do that I'm using a ball stylus so I don't mess up a paintbrush. I'm grabbing a bit from the jar and just letting it kind of gloop onto the top of the miniature, and I'm setting it onto the surface. Here's how the treasure dresser is looking, and I really like how it came out. I did test the day later to see how the rubber cement came off, and all I had to do is rub my finger over it on the miniature and on the surface, and it came off beautifully. This was made by my friend Marie in a swap that we did, and so of course that needs to go into the treasure room. I'm also adding in this little gold chair, which is really a jewelry box. I saw it in a store a long time ago and I was like, hey, that's dollhouse size. And of course I had to buy it. I have been eyeing these little safes for years. Typically they're anywhere between $80 to $100, but I found one broken at a flea market, and luckily they still had the little dial, and I was always hesitant about fixing it because, well, not fixing it, but just gluing the piece on, because if it is able to be fixed someday, I would love for that to happen. So for now, I'm using the rubber cement to temporarily tack the dial in place, so I do have a vault in my vault. And this becomes the perfect place to add Anna's little tray of goodies, because it covers up the bank opening at the top of my little miniature bank. I'm adding in my Iron Maiden that I made in a previous video. She's made out of paper towels, and she's actually stood up to the test of time really well. I've been really pleasantly surprised. And finally, I'm adding in this little piece, which doesn't have a lot of significance, except that it's going to hold this piece, which is a shrunken head made by Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo Miniatures. And she sent this to me a long time ago, specifically for the Addams family, and it's really delicate, so I wanted to make sure I was ready to put it in place, and I think it fits really well on this little table. I'm also adding in a couple little masks, and then there's this phoenix bird symbol, and I'm just going to be hanging those on the wall with rubber cement. That's it for the treasure room. I still feel like it's missing something. I don't know if I need more family portraits or what I need. If you have some ideas, leave them in the comments. It's just kind of my least favorite room of the project, even though I love the pieces that are in it. I think it's the room itself, the walls, that I'm just not happy with at the moment. I did want to show you real quick before we get to Lurch's room. I did put Uncle Knick-Knack under the stairs in Grandmama's, and he'll kind of stay there until I decide whether or not I'm making him a cabinet, but for now he's happy in his little alcove. So finally, we're now at Lurch's room, but before I put all of his miniatures in, I have a few things I want to create. A very kind patron sent me a gift card to miniatures.com, and I was able to purchase these items for Lurch. One of them is a kit, but this one is an artist easel that comes with two little mini canvases. Now these are mass made, they're printed onto some compressed board, it looks like, and what I want to do is change these so they look like unfinished paintings, and I want to make the easel look a little less like plastic and a little more like old wood. First, I'm going to get started with the paintings. I'm using some white paint to basically white out some areas so it looks like he hasn't painted in those areas yet. And then I did decide to be a little bit whimsical and add in some Addams family features, and you'll see that in a second. But I do like how these came out, and I do like to think, you know, Lurch works on his paintings in his free time. As you can see, this one I added a little place he was leaving for a spider monster that he will be adding in later on. And I went back and added white edges to these to continue going with the canvas look, because typically if you're painting on a canvas, the canvas white wraps all the way around the edge. For the other painting, it's a very similar idea. I took some white and took out some of the areas as though he had not painted those areas yet. Just a reminder, these are printed, so I'm not painting over anybody else's hand-painted work. I also decided, instead of leaving a blank spot for the monster, I'd just go ahead and paint it in. I'm putting a tentacle or two into this painting, and that was a really fun addition, and every now and then I can change out which one of these paintings is on the easel. I think this was a fun way to customize this to be a very Addams edition. Oh, and I went back and added some pencil marks, so it does look like he was marking out his ideas. Now over to the easel. I sprayed it with some Mr. Super Clear, but I could have used any plastic primer, and this is just going to give me a surface to paint on. Plastic doesn't typically like taking acrylic paint. I'm using a duller brown as the base coat, and then I'm going to go over it with a gray, and I'm going to be dry brushing that to try and give the illusion of very old wood that's just been drying out and sitting around for years. And then I'm also going to be adding some little specks of paint to the area that holds the canvas and a little bit above it. That's what my easel looks like, and I made sure to use paints from the paintings so that it looks like, you know, he was painting those paintings on that easel. And I really like how it came out. I think it looks unique and perfect for Lurch. And finally, I'm putting together this little artist paint box, and this is a kit by Dragonfly International. I will leave that website in the description box below. It was a really fun kit to put together. Putting together the little box went pretty quickly, and I don't know if that's just because I am at heart a furniture builder when it comes to miniatures, and so that just makes sense to me and I enjoy it. It was putting the little items that go inside the box together that took me forever, but I really like how it came out, and I think it is just adds so much detail. There's little divisions on the inside, and of course the drawer. I couldn't really get my drawer closed, but I wanted it open anyway, so it didn't matter to me. All the little details were so amazing, and as a oil painting fan myself, I really appreciated that. I kind of went back and forth on how I wanted the design to be. I didn't want it to be dirty, but I wanted it just to be a little bit jostled. And then I also added paint onto the paint palette to show it had been used, and then glued it into the lid. And that's the finished piece for the art box. I didn't show a lot of it, but as it is a kit, if you decide to make one and purchase the kit, it has all the directions in there. So now I'm putting in Lurch's little fold-away bed, his ironing board, and I really love this old-timey looking vacuum. I think we used to have one that was that shape. I'm going to add in his art easel and both paintings that could be changed out every now and then. The other one is behind the easel against the wall. I'm adding in the art box that's going to go right next to the easel. And I did find in my collection these little slippers, and I just thought it would be funny to put those in Lurch's area because obviously, like, that's just funny. Like, his feet are gonna be way too big for those. So I put those at the foot of his bed. And here is Lurch's area. I did remember that I needed to add lights to these areas. I have this one for the treasure room or vault, and when I turned it on, it didn't work all that well. It kind of was just dim, so I'm thinking I need to replace the battery, so I'll have to purchase some batteries. I need some of those anyway since I'm using all battery lights. I need to just keep a pack of those. I do turn down the lights a little bit so that you can see that it's on, but you can see that it's just barely on. But the other lights I got from that seller worked really, really well, so I just think I need to change the battery. in Lurch's area, I thought it'd be really cute to give him just a hurricane lamp that can kind of roam about the room. This is how it looks when it turns on, and I had it on one side, but then I thought it was really cute to put it over by the art area, and I like how it lit up his room, and I could just picture him bending over his cot working on his painting. And finally, I had a subscriber who is a professional artist that works in the comic world send me his drawing of Wednesday, and I just love it. And I asked him if I could put it into Lurch's little alcove. And so this piece is by Lawston Wallace. I will put his website below if you love comic art. It's really talented, so thank you, Lawston, for that. And yeah, I'm just so happy with this, and we're done. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will also tune in next week for the grand finale of the Addams Family project. I will be finishing up a few last things, and then I will also be kind of giving an overview of the project, how I feel wrapping up a 10-year project, my regrets, my future plans, would I ever do it again, those type of things. And so that will come out. I gotta get my calendar. That will actually come out on October 31st, which is a Saturday instead of a Friday. I will put a reminder, and I will actually do an entire walkthrough, a tour of each and every room, and also give you some special insights into some of my favorite pieces and little stories here and there that I have to go along with the project. If you're new to this channel and you really enjoyed this series, make sure to subscribe and check out my playlists. I have several other projects that I have worked on and completed, and that I am continually working on now. In November, I will be getting back to those projects. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you on Halloween. Bye.